episode of Chatty Broads with Becca and Jess.
Okay, broads.
Well, hey, broads.
Okay, I just have to get into it because I'm raring to go. I was DMing. I don't remember why. I don't usually DM with followers because I'm a lot better than that, as you guys know. So got to keep my feet out of the mud, so they say. Just kidding. But actually, I don't generally like converse back and forth in my DMs in general with people I don't know.
You probably also then wouldn't have time in the day to like take care of your children.
Sure. Yeah. Well, just generally, I generally don't like converse back and forth. But I started conversing back and forth with this person. I don't even remember what we were talking about, but they brought up I was like raised in an Amway cult. I guess I must have been talking about cults or something on my Instagram. Anyway, she was like, if you ever want me to come on and talk about it, I would be glad to. And so I told Jess, I'm like, hey, maybe we should talk about this. And then Jess was like, yeah, let's do it. Sounds cool. So, which has brought us here today. We are going to do a full dive into Amway and a little bit about MLMs and pyramid schemes in general. And then,
which I have to say too, every time we post like a question box about like, what would you like us to talk about? There are always numerous asks to dive into MLMs.
Yeah.
Multi-level marketing. Yes. And so I'm always like, okay, the broads want to talk about this. Like, let's talk about it.
Yeah. So I'm excited because we're just going to like talk about some of this stuff. And then we're going to have on a broad who had, just from the snippets that she just told me over the DMs, a very fascinating upbringing with two parents who were a part of Amway. So do you want to just like dive into it?
Let's dive in. Okay. Taking a deep breath before diving into this episode. And speaking of breathing, broads, making sure that the air that you breathe in your home is clean is one of the easiest, most effective ways to feel your best, especially during allergy season, okay? Today's episode is sponsored by my absolute favorite air purifier that I cannot even believe I lived without for so long, and that is Air Doctor.
Air Doctor's pretty much the gold standard when it comes to clean air. They use an ultra HEPA filter. It's been tested and proven to remove, get this number, guys, 99.9% of bacteria and viruses as small as 0.003 microns. I don't even know what that is, but all you need to know is that it's 100 times smaller than even the HEPA standard. So pretty much nothing gets past the Air Doctor 3000.
And Air Doctor uses a patented whisper fan, so it's so much quieter than most purifiers. I don't even remember that it's on most of the time, but wow, do I feel the difference. So go to airdoctorpro.com and use promo code chatty and you'll receive a 35% discount on the classic Air Doctor 3000 purifier. That's right, 35% off, but only if you go to airdoctorpro.com and use promo code chatty. That's airdoctorpro.com and use promo code chatty. I also want to make something clear at the top. We used to do this at the top of episodes and we stopped doing this and we need to get back into it.
That's right. I already know where you're going.
We used to say, this is not a TED Talk.
It's not a fucking TED Talk.
This is not a TED Talk because we are not experts.
Granted, I'm not going to lie. I have TED Talk notes today.
Becca
I do.
Came in. There's been preparation done.
Yeah, both of us have been researching
on these things. In fact, I don't think we're experts on anything except our own lives.
Except me.
We are.
Do you think we were maybe experts on The Bachelor? I think we were getting to that point, to be honest.
I think maybe.
Dude, don't you have to put in like 10,000 hours? Like, I feel like we were getting to our 10,000 hours.
We've accrued that for sure. Definitely professionals.
I mean, I lived it, so does those hours count?
Oh, 1,000%. You're a Bachelor expert. I might be a Bachelor professional. Okay. I feel like maybe there's a difference between professional and like expert level. Right. Like you have gotten your doctorate in bachelordom, and I'm like, I got my bachelor's degree in The Bachelor. So
yeah, okay, because I'm just doing the math. I put in that's actually not much. I only put in about 800 hours on The Bachelor filming it. That's 24 hours a day sleeping.
Well, we've watched a lot of the seasons and we also have recorded for many hours. So I feel like at that point, after recording about like 300 episodes about it.
We haven't even put in 1,000 hours of podcasting. We haven't even gotten to that yet.
How is that possible? That actually makes me sad.
I know. The other day I was like doing the math because we're coming up on 400 episodes, and I'm like, damn, 400 episodes, that's a lot. But then when you start thinking about it in hours, it's not even 1,000 hours.
Well, God, now I feel like I have to just like get behind the mic and we have to just start pumping it out until we at least hit 1,000 because that feels okay. Maybe if you add in like the planning and then like the prep and the watching of the shows for certain things.
We have our bachelor's degree.
Yes, bachelor's degree.
On the Bachelor.
You're a doctorate to me, but
okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Becca.
But the point is, we're not doctorates in this, but we wanted to get into it, do some research, and talk about it.
Okay. Can I give you some background on pyramid schemes?
Please, Queen.
Okay. So first of all, this is something that's this is what I found so fascinating, learning about MLMs and like Amway in general, and then like pyramid schemes, because the two, it's interesting because a pyramid scheme is actually something that's illegal, right? So
it is illegal.
The Federal Trade Commission does not, if they investigate and they find out that you're operating a pyramid scheme, you're in big trouble.
Yes.
However, Amway, there's a bazillion. You could go on and on.
Avon.
Avon.
Mary Kay.
LuLaRoe, Mary Kay. I mean, there's a bazillion.
There's lots of MLMs. Yes.
I remember there was one when I was in high school that was like specifically geared to teens, which is also so sketchy because you'd have to get your parents' credit card in order to do payments on it. It was called like Verve.
Also, I know that there's a lot of companies that I use that I didn't even know were from MLMs.
Oh yeah,
like products that I use that I like that were, to be honest,
like I've used doTERRA and Young Living, for instance. Those are MLMs.
And I remember I had no idea.
Well, that's what's interesting, and that's what you kind of come. All right, here's the definition of a pyramid scheme. Well, at least this is how a senior economist at the FTC defines it. His name's Peter Van Nat. Anyway, a pyramid scheme is where participants gain their monetary benefits primarily through recruitment rather than the sales of goods and services to the consumers.
Okay.
So that's a pyramid scheme.
So the difference then with an MLM would be...
Well, we're going to get into that because that's where things get a little fuzzy.
Hazy.
And what's very interesting about Amway in particular is that there is a lot of crossing paths with politics and politicians. It is actually going to, I don't know if you got into any of this when you were doing your research, but it blew my mind how some of these people were involved in politics, especially in the 70s and 80s. It is wild. But anyway, so their MLMs are obviously different too. So something like doTERRA or Young Living, their product is actually really well known and is like regularly distributed.
Yes.
Like that's they are actually known for their product versus something like an Amway where it seems pretty clear that like the product they're offering is not the main focus. It's the recruitment. I just watched a documentary on Herbalife last night called Betting on Zero. And with Herbalife, it's like a lot of their protein powders and stuff were triple or quadruple the cost of what you could just go to a grocery store and get.
Okay.
At which point, and there's even like, this is where it gets super sketchy. There are people being filmed in recruitment meetings and all that saying like, it's not about the product. It's about getting more people to sign up under you. That's how you're going to make your money, which is kind of the definition of a pyramid scheme. But anyway, the first notable pyramid scheme was from a man named Charles Ponzi. And this is where you get the term Ponzi scheme.
Okay.
It was not the first one ever because this idea is fairly basic, but this is the most notable one. What I thought was really interesting is Charles Ponzi kind of came up during the Gilded Age, the late 1800s, which there was a lot of talk about the Gilded Age recently with the Met Gala. It's known for its rapid industrial expansion and a large economic imbalance between those at the top and a massive labor force, which sounds kind of familiar at this point, Early 1900s, lots of factory workers, lots of people who were barely making enough to support their families while the people at the top were mega wealthy. I also
running the country, you may say.
Yes. Did you also know that it was called? I just learned this. It was called the Gilded Age because the idea is there's this gilded gold glittery surface that's covering all the stuff below.
I
didn't
no
put that
idea,
together.
and that gives me chills in a horrifying way.
Yeah, exactly.
Like terror chills.
That's why they called it the Gilded Age, because
Okay.
it was like, you know,
They make it makes it sound so glamorous, but then the definition, you're like,
gold
and
is
that's
gilding
what it
over
is.
something super dark, all this dark stuff
okay,
going
wow.
under the surface, poverty, people suffering,
Yeah.
whatever. Okay, he was an Italian immigrant and a scam artist, and what I found ironic and sad is that later on his scheme was specifically targeting like fellow immigrants who are stuck in poverty. And this is also a theme that I saw with Herbalife when I was watching the documentary, is they often preyed upon undocumented citizens and trying to get people who were basically like the most vulnerable to recruit on board. Okay, here's what his scheme was. There are these things called, like, they were postage stamp coupons. So you would redeem this coupon for postage stamps. That's just something that's so out of, I feel like, our normal
I'm like,
life
what's
now.
that?
Stamps.com? That's what I know about. So these postage stamp coupons, because of the exchange rate, you could buy them in Italy and get them super, super cheap. And then they were international coupons. So you could use them in the US. So you could basically like sell them in the US at a profit.
Got it.
By buying them in Italy.
Okay.
So that's kind of what he started out as, like, hey, look, I can buy these coupons in Italy. You can use them and sell them in the United States, and you're going to profit because the exchange rate is like so different in these two different countries. So what he started doing is he started bringing on investors, saying like, hey, invest, I'm going to get these coupons. He was promising like huge turns in profit, like you're going to get a 50% return within like 30 days or something like that. So people started coming on, and of course, how most pyramid schemes work is the first people that get in on it, they're making their profit.
Of course.
They're happy. Their job is to go out and recruit more people. So basically what he was doing, he was bringing in investors, and then he would bring in more investors. Then he would pay the old investors with the new investors' money, which obviously becomes an unsustainable business model because you're actually operating like because you're paying off the people with the new money, even if when you haven't turned a profit.
So they don't know the new people who are coming in, who are getting paid with some of the older members' money.
No. The old members are getting paid with the new members' money. So let's say Ponzi got you on board 2 years ago, or like two months ago, let's say. I'm a new person. Oh, I'm going to invest $1,000 with Charles Ponzi. And then he's like, here, Jess, here's some of the returns on your investment with my $1,000 that I just gave him to invest.
And the people who are the new members, they're assuming that money is coming from profits.
Exactly.
And that, I believe, is the definition of a Ponzi scheme, correct?
Yeah, basically, yeah. So this is what was so wild to me. By July 1920, he was making, in 1920, $1 million a day. Do you know what that correlates to now into the 2020s?
Smokes.
That's approximately $14 million a day with current inflation.
Some Jeff Bezos shit.
Straight up, like $14 million a day. But here's the thing. In order to cover the investments, supposedly he should have been getting about 160 million postal coupons of these coupons. They were supposed to be in circulation. However, when things started getting investigated, only about 27,000 were actually in circulation. So he wasn't even buying these coupons.
No.
He's literally just recruiting and using their money to feed the old, to keep it running.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, so the United States Post Office stated like, hey, no, these coupons are not being bought in any large quantity at home or abroad. These literally aren't in circulation. And the gross profit, this is also what was really interesting to me. The investments were huge, and so the profit margin should have been huge, but the actual overhead that would have been required to handle the purchases and redemption of these coupons, they were really low cost because they were stamps. They're coupons for stamps, and they were sold individually.
Okay.
The overhead would have actually exceeded the profit. So even if he actually was buying these coupons, like the actual logistics of bringing them from Italy to the United States and like selling them individually
Would have exceeded that.
Yeah. So there was no real, so it was a scheme, there's no actual, there's a skeleton structure. he ended up going to prison for a bunch of time. He got found out, but this was wild to me. During his prison terms, Ponzi continued to get Christmas cards from some of his investors, as well as requests from others to continue investing their money, even from his prison cell. They were so bought in.
Yeah.
And this is one thing about MLMs, which I want to get into, and schemes in general, that do kind of fit these characteristics of a cult. And I think we should talk more about this when we bring on our guest. But just do you know anyone who's been in any kind of Ponzi or pyramid scheme? Not an MLM, because technically those aren't, and I'll tell you why, but...
Yes, okay. So I know many people who have been in MLMs.
Right.
And currently still
Sure.
do. As far as a pyramid scheme or Ponzi scheme goes, the only person I know who was involved in a Ponzi scheme was Evan's uncle, who went to prison for like 15 years. So that's part of our side of the family.
Get this. My grandpa did a Ponzi scheme in the 80s.
Really?
My dad told me about. It's like a quick one.
Was he participating in it, or was he the head of it?
Well, I'll tell you how this goes. Okay, so he did a pyramid scheme called the Plane Game. So
Okay.
I didn't realize that there were these like kind of games that you would play where you're very aware that this is a scheme, but the scheme relies on if you get in at the right time, you'll make your money. Someone eventually is going to lose their money. Here's how this plane game worked. I find this so interesting. Okay. There's a pilot. Okay, in the plane, and then this is all made up, right?
Right.
It's just what they call these positions.
It's metaphorical.
Yes, yes. So there's this pilot.
Okay.
And then there are two co-pilots.
Okay.
So two co-pilots under the pilot.
Okay.
Then there are 4 flight attendants under each of the under the co-pilots.
Okay.
So 1, 2, 4. There's the levels.
1, 2,
First level,
4,
second level, third level, and then there's 8 passengers. So how it
small plane.
works? It's a PJ.
Yeah, and also like a flight attendant, 1 to every 2 people. That's
2
nice.
co-pilots.
Yeah, it's good.
This is a luxurious plane.
It's very
experience.
luxurious.
So how it works is basically each person has to recruit 2 people. So the pilot has to recruit 2 people under them.
Okay.
Those 2 people each have to recruit 2 people under them. 2 people under them. That's how you get to the 8 passengers. So once you have these 8 passengers, once they all buy in, which typically was about $1,500, then the pilot would retire. Okay, with the pilot takes the 12 grand that all these 8 people have just invested, and then the co-pilots split into 2 new planes where they're now the pilots, and then the people who were the flight attendants are now the co-pilots, and the 4 and 4 passengers are now. So what
now
they
we have
to
multiple
do?
planes.
Yeah. So now we have multiple planes, but how it basically works is you're trying to just each person has to try to get in 2 people at least to invest this $1,200 or $1,500. And then if you can keep the plane moving, then you're making 12 grand once you eventually get to the pilot position.
So let me ask you something. In this metaphorical plane, product is this metaphorical plane?
There's no product. This is a straight up pyramid scheme. Like,
so people were literally just giving
playing
money,
a game.
playing a game, and just giving money and
it worked. My grandpa got out with his 12 grand. Everyone had recruited the people that they needed to recruit, and he got his money and went. So it relies on keeping this money moving. Eventually, of course, it's going to fall apart. People aren't going to be able to get new people to invest, whatever. People are going to lose out on their money.
Do you know what I'm thinking about too as you're saying this? I'm trying to imagine how much of this is going on right now in the current like crypto world where things are like, you can't touch them, right? And it's like invisible, like how many of these might be happening where people think they're like investing money into something, but because you can't like physically touch it, it just doesn't exist.
I don't know. If I even start thinking about it, it blows my mind, and it's a little too much to think about.
Can't process it.
But yeah, so it does work to a certain point until you can't stop, until people stop recruiting new people, which is essentially how MLMs do work in a certain way.
Right, except
because
with the MLM, there's a product.
Yes.
Okay.
And they basically have to prove that their product is the main way that people gain their income and not through recruitment.
Okay.
Which that's where things get a little fuzzy. But yeah. So pyramid schemes are just focused on recruitment, no product. The product is like a front. Okay. Now Amway was founded by two men called J. Van Andel and Richard DeVos.
Oh, does that last name sound familiar? DeVos? Oh, Betsy DeVos?
How wild was it to go down? Okay.
Oh, has anybody heard Bernie Sanders?
Yeah.
Interviewing Betsy DeVos?
Yeah. Right.
Asking how much money her family has given the Republican Party, and that family money is from DeVos.
So, well, actually, this is what's so crazy too, is that, so Richard's son, one of the original creators of Amway, Dick DeVos, he's the one who's married to Betsy DeVos, but even Betsy DeVos's dad, did you know this, is Betsy's dad is Edgar Prince, a billionaire industrialist and founder of Family Research Council. That's Betsy's dad. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
So this all goes in very deep and very, very intertwined.
Well, let's just say deep into our government, deep into who is being elected.
Absolutely.
This money is very connected to that, and there are hundreds of millions of dollars connected.
Absolutely. So Richard DeVos and J. Van Andel, they had already been distributors of a product called Nutrilite for about 10 years, before, which was one of the first original MLMs in the US. It started in the 40s. Amway eventually acquired it, and actually even now Amway still sells Nutrilite products. But anyway.
Well, and do you know why they stopped Nutrilite for a second and started Amway?
Why?
So apparently at that current time, Nutrilite is like a health supplement or whatever.
Right.
And that was being eyeballed by the FTC. So there were a lot of companies, I forget the one specific one that had a huge lawsuit because, it proved to not work or whatnot. So they believed that getting their hands involved in Nutrilite was a little sketchy, that they could get in trouble. So then they stopped that, started Amway, and then eventually brought Nutrilite onto Amway.
Under the Amway umbrella.
Yeah, once that heat was taken off a little bit from that sector.
Well, what was wild then is in the 70s, that's when DeVos started putting money behind his beliefs. So he was making major donations to the Christian Freedom Foundation, which he chaired on, Third Century Publishers, which put out a guidebook on how conservative Christians could win elections and help America become as it was when it was first founded, a Christian republic. Yeah. And this is where I do think, so, you know what, I'll get in actually all of the different, what makes a cult a cult. I think we can go deeper into that, like I said, when we have our guest on, but keep all of this in mind, sort of the religious affiliation, like a lot of Amway's core messages was about like bringing back good old American values, which Amway is short for the American way. Ooh,
Spooky.
It's dark, right? It's dark. In 1975, the FTC began investigating Amway as a pyramid scheme. Get this. In 1975, Richard DeVos and J. Van Andel had a meeting with President Gerald Ford at the White House, a 45-minute meeting in 1975. Curious that they were having a meeting with the president. It's actually, I guess, quite beneficial that they're having a meeting with the president right when their business started getting investigated as a pyramid scheme. By the way, even on the Gerald Ford Foundation website, it shares that Richard DeVos was a longtime close friend of Gerald and Betty Ford. DeVos even served as an honorary pallbearer at General Ford's state funeral, and he's also an honorary trustee of the Gerald Ford Presidential Foundation. It's not like they had any real involvement in each other's lives. Not like there would be any conflict of interest.
And interestingly enough, I would also encourage individuals, you can hear clips from all sorts of presidents, from Gerald Ford to Trump, talking about Amway and their support of it.
Well, wild.
And then when you see the money that comes in.
Oh, yeah.
It makes sense.
Ronald Reagan, even, this really blew my mind. He not only made Richard DeVos the finance chair of the Republican National Committee. Did you know he also made Richard DeVos part of the President's Commission for the HIV epidemic? I'm sure Richard DeVos knew a lot about the HIV epidemic.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So they're just part of this little press club.
No idea.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm sweating right now. Like I am. Oh, geez. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And in October, okay, this is where And I got to give them all credit for this, I have to say. And my dad has always said this to me. One of the biggest mistakes that my parents made, so my dad says, in their own personal like Christian journey was conflating biblical Christian values with the Republican Party values. And a lot of that started happening first in the 70s, but really blew up during like the 80s and 90s during Reagan's, while Reagan was in office, and then it has only kind of continued
Surprisingly,
on since
when
then.
an actor was in office. I wonder when that happened again, when a celebrity was in office.
So wild. Well, in October 1994, Amway gave actually the biggest corporate contribution recorded to that date to a political party for a single election. They gave $2.5 million to the Republican National Committee. And that was the number one corporate political donor in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, Richard DeVos even personally donated over $200 million to the Republican Party and other conservative groups over his lifetime.
Yes.
200 million?
Yes. Well, that was when Bernie was interviewing Betsy DeVos and was like, has your family,
Has your father-in-law,
has your family, he even just said family in general, donated money to the Republican Party? And she said, yes, we did. And he's like, do you know how much? And she's like, I couldn't say. And he's like, is it safe to say at least $200 million? And she's like, that's a fair guess. So yeah.
And that was only from Richard DeVos personally. And again, not even, that's her father-in-law. And then, like I said, her father is literally a billionaire who is then donating to her husband's family's foundations and all of that. It's extremely messy. And actually, there is a Republican representative, Sue Myrick, who was an Amway distributor. She ended up serving 9 terms in Congress. 9. Her first campaign to become a representative was in 1994. Half of the funding for her campaign was through Amway fundraising done through their voicemail systems. So Amway is literally hitting up distributors being like, hey, donate to your fellow Amway distributors election campaign to be in Congress.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so
it's getting a little convoluted up in here.
Straight up. And she ended up serving 9 terms in Congress.
Wow.
Yeah. So that, I was like, this is truly, it is the American way. I thought that was just wild, like the way, and there's so much more than that, but those are kind of surface levels, like how deeply Amway is entrenched in conservative political culture and in our government in the United States.
Yes.
And of course, in 1979, they,
when there was
4
the
years
loss
after the meeting, the FTC decided that Amway was not a pyramid scheme. It did not, this is why they decided it wasn't a pyramid scheme. I did think this was interesting because they didn't charge an upfront headhunting or large investment fee from new recruits.
I think it's like $100.
Yeah, it's like I think it's 76 when I looked on their website. And also on their site, they do say you can receive a full refund on the $76 you paid at registration if you cancel within 90 days. And they also said that Amway does not promote inventory loading by requiring distributors to buy large volumes of non-returnable inventory, which distributors are encouraged to take on inventory. I mean, I'm sure you've heard from a variety of different MLMs, from LuLaRoe to Herbalife, of people literally having like garages and spare bedrooms.
I've seen it with my own eyes, baby. Seen it with my own eyes.
We're going to get into that.
With friends,
However, on their website, Amway does say you can return any unused and unsold products for a full refund and they'll pay for the shipping.
Okay.
So because of these policies, like, you know, they are allowing people to get out. They're not technically requiring a super big upfront investment. Therefore, it doesn't fall under the category of pyramid scheme. So, I mean, I do think that is sketchy with all their political involvement, but also using these technicalities of how to define a pyramid scheme, they technically don't fall under one.
Right, but like you said, it is hazy.
It is hazy, and it's also hazy. The structure is super similar because and I will be interested to talk to our lovely guest because you know, a lot of people's own personal anecdotes with MLMs is that they are encouraged above all else to recruit new people to be distributors.
Yes, that's very true. And you know, and you can't call it a pyramid scheme. You can call it a triangle.
Right.
It's triangle.
Right.
Which Anywho.
Well, yeah, the typical earnings, I looked it up, and this is actually on Amway's website income disclosure, or their income disclosure on their website. The top 50% of Amway distributors make $3,400 annually on average. That comes out to $284 a month.
Correct.
And that's the top 50% of their distributors.
Correct.
So, and then Amway as a whole had sales of over $8 billion in 2019. Yeah.
And I know that the FTC had reported a few years ago that 99% of MLM participants lose money. More recently, though, the AARP came out and they found out that the numbers aren't quite that intense, that the AARP found out that 25% of those surveyed made a profit while 27 broke even.
Okay.
But again, that 25% that did make a profit are the numbers that you're talking about. So it's like technically there was money made.
But we're talking $200 a month.
And this is something that people are, dedicating their entire time to and being encouraged, by the way, to use this as their main source of income and quit their jobs.
Absolutely, to recruit more and more people. And that's, I think, where things can get super, super dark. You said that you know or have just kind of personal experience.
I do. I have a lot of personal experience with people who are involved in MLMs. I know for myself growing up in the church, a lot of specifically the moms who I was around were part of different MLMs, whether that be Arbonne, Mary Kay, LuLaRoe, and then a lot of times in their younger, like, daughters who were my age would then get involved in them, and we'd always have the parties. So there was always, so what you do if you don't know, they were fun. If you don't know, it's typically someone who is a personal business owner, which is what they would call someone who is part of one of these MLMs, would throw a party and invite like friends and family and people from that area. A lot of times it was people from our church, and you'd go to a party and they'd be selling the product there. But then they'd also be trying to recruit. They would normally do like a little seminar at the top about why you should join yourself. And then kind of sell the product. At least I would see typically secondarily. There was always the pitch at the top, and then it was like, here's the product.
Well, and then you're like, oh, you want these foot masks? Well, also, if you become actually like a distributor right now, you only have to pay this, but you get 50% off all of the
So of course, it's like super appealing when you hear about this, especially too. It's like, were a lot of us, like some of us, specifically younger women, were like, oh, a lot of them wanted to have kids. And it's like, I would like to make some money, but also have the ability to stay home with my kids. So of course it sounded super appealing. So I know a lot of people who got involved in it, but that's kind of what the experience that I had seeing the MLMs involved in my church. But I also have some very specific personal experiences,
close relationships,
very close friendships with people who were involved in Amway, and also some people who left and have told me some things since.
Okay, let's get into this. First, let's bring on our guest. So we're going to have one of our Broad Squad members join us right now. We're going to bring her on.
Oh, and I'm going to turn that air on. So sorry, Broads, ignore the noise. It's hot in Los Angeles, and it's about to get way hotter in here with all this tea. Okay, Broads, quick pause before we dive way deeper into this, and cannot wait to have our amazing guest on. But first, Broads, if you have been considering birth control or wanting to switch your birth control, based on recent events, I'd say the time is now. Of course, sometimes it's easier said than done, but Favor is making access to birth control easier than ever, no matter where you are.
Favor, we love them. Favor is actually a new name of a company that we've advertised for in the past. They carry over 120 FDA-approved brands, and they ship to all 50 states. And most brands of birth control are actually free with insurance or Medicaid, which is a big deal. And otherwise, prices start as low as $7 a month without insurance. And Favor delivers birth control to your door for free in discreet packaging. It just takes a few minutes, and your birth control is going to be on its way.
And if down the road you decide you want to try something different, or maybe have questions about the best birth control for you and your situation, Favor's licensed medical team is just a text away to provide care and support. I personally, very vividly remember when I first went on birth control, and honestly, it was a little scary. I didn't feel like there was a good resource to get information from, and I didn't understand all the options. If Favor was around back then, my life would have been a whole lot easier, but at least we have it now, right?
Yes, that is right. And when you go to heyfavor.com/chatty, Favor is offering a $10 donation to bedsider.org for every Chatty Broads listener who becomes a patient. So that's really cool. Your donation helps low-income individuals get access to birth control through bedsider.org. So go to heyfavor.com/chatty to get your first birth control care package. And that's where they will donate to help women in need of affordable birth control. Remember, go to Favor, FAVOR.com/chatty, heyfavor.com/chatty. You have to use that link in order for the donation to be made.
So when it comes to what makes any of us feel good, well, that can change in a moment's notice, right? Maybe one day you feel best working out like crazy for numerous hours, and the next day you feel best curled up in a ball on the couch. Or maybe one day you've got on your slow jams playlist, and the next it's all about the throwbacks. Feeling good is easy when you've got lots of options on the table, and the same goes for feeling good in the bedroom, which is why Dipsea is my go-to for content that makes me feel oh so good, no matter what I'm in the mood for.
Oh my gosh, guys, we've been talking about Dipsea for, I think, actually years now, but for good reason. This is a sexy audio story app, guys. It's full of hundreds of short, immersive stories with any scenario you're wanting to explore. They have so many options. Maybe you want to hear about two coworkers finally getting together, or maybe you want to hear about the yoga teacher who makes a move on their student. That might be your fantasy. I don't know. The scenarios are so immersive, it literally feels like you're in the middle of the action. You just put in some noise-canceling headphones. Boom, you're right there with the characters in a very sexy way. Plus, Dipsea releases new content every single week, so you always have something new and exciting to explore.
And I insist, take your time in the content library while you're on the app. Dipsea has so much to offer. For one, they just launched a collection of written stories, which is great for the visual learner, if you know what I mean. But they also have a collection of sleep stories, wellness sessions, and soundscapes, all designed to help you wind down, relax, and feel good.
And I just have to say, none of their content is corny at all. You really have to see for yourself. It is very impressive and very erotic. So for listeners of the show, Dipsea is offering an extended 30-day free trial when you go to dipseastories.com/chatty. That's 30 days of full access for free when you go to DIPSEA stories.com/chatty. That's like a dip in the sea, dipseastories.com/chatty.
And with us here, we have one of our Broad Squad members, Kirsten, joining us.
Yes.
Okay, so I was saying at the beginning of the episode, like, you and I were DMing. I don't even remember why you brought up, like, yeah, I was kind of like raised in an Amway cult, and it was kind of crazy. Didn't realize that not everyone had the same experience.
Yeah, I think I responded to one of your DMs, which anytime anyone ever responds to me, even if they have like one follower, I'm like, hey, go. So I was not expecting you to respond. But I think you were, it's funny just how we talked about it was you were talking about the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial how people are just like jumping on one side or the other. And I said, well, once someone like believes what one person like believes some sort of influencer or authority figure,
influential figure,
anything they say. And I said, it's like how Christians hated Justin Bieber until Jesus Smith was like, I like Justin Bieber, I'm friends with him. And then everyone's like, Justin Bieber!
All the parents are like, you can go to the concert now. You can listen to the music now.
He's anointed by the Lord.
Love him. He sang a worship song once and everyone's like, yes! And I had gone to the church formerly known as City Church for a while.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what we were talking about. You were like, oh my gosh, I bet that was crazy.
Yes.
And I was like, you want to hear crazy? I grew up in Amway, like deep in Amway. And you were like, what?
I didn't know. So I didn't know until really going into all of this how Amway in particular we were just talking about it for 30 minutes, very kind of insidious ties and roots into like the Republican Party and just the government in general and the president and all of that, all based with this idea of family values and the true Christian America and like all of that wrapped into it. Which also was really dark as I was going into it, because the reason why I feel like MLMs like Amway in particular get away with it, it is because they're built upon this fundamental belief, which is really popular in conservative Christianity, that like, if you are not succeeding, if you're not making money, it's because you're not trying hard enough. Just in general, like with people who are homeless, who are addicts or whatever, it's like, well, you're there because you didn't try hard enough. And just listening and reading stuff online, it's the same thing with Amway. If you're not making money, if you're only making $75 a month, or you're not turning any profit, it's because you are not working as hard as you should be. And I feel like that's why it works.
Yeah. Well, and the phrase that's used is it works, you're just not working it. That was the phrase that was used. And so actually there's something to clarify, which is really unique from what I understand. I don't know a lot about other MLMs. Thank God. Because in fact, there's very much this like, it's like, I'm not like other girls energy in Amway, which I totally believed. Like I grew up very like anti-MLM. I was like, no, MLMs suck. This is a legitimate business. And so I remember so distinctly after I had left, which I'll give a quick like recap of my background and story.
Yes.
After I had left, I was listening to the Nexium podcast, which is like full on like physical, sexual, mental, emotional abuse cult. And I remember being like, I like burst through the front door and I was like, honey, there's so much about this that's like the exact same. And I was like, oh, it is just another MLM. Like it is just like all the other MLMs. Like it was so weird to me to realize that. But yeah, my background is before I was born, long before I was born, I think about 10 years before I was born, my parents and my grandparents got involved in Amway. And something about Amway that I do think is different from other MLMs is that there's something called lines of affiliation, which is really where all the like training and mentorship and the culture comes from. So I grew up in an organization called Worldwide Dream Builders, which is just a name. This is a great name, but people just called it Worldwide or WWDB. Very rarely did people call it Worldwide Dream Builders because I think there was even like in it
a little self-awareness.
Some people just called it Worldwide, and we're like, oh yeah, we're all over the world. Yeah, that's why. So I grew up in it, and not just like someone who was like, oh yeah, I grew up and my parents worked at Microsoft, or I grew up. It wasn't what my parents did. It was as important to us as our religion. It was the culture of everything that we did, like every family decision. And it was a family mission. And so that's how it was spoken about, was this is the calling on our family. And I have two older brothers, and all of us were just completely sold out. Like it wasn't, to me, it wasn't, this is something that we're involved in. Like, you know, my brother did football. That's something that he's involved in. It wasn't like that. It was
an identity.
Yeah. It wasn't even what my parents did for. Like, it was who we are, 100% an identity. And so when I graduated high school, it was time for me to do my thing. This is something I've really been working through because I actually love school and academics. And I really, in my heart, wanted to go to college so bad, but college is spoken of horribly. It is the most stupid thing you can do is go to college in that culture. And so for me, it wasn't an option. It was like, well, it's an option, but it's the wrong choice. Like, you can choose to go to it, but it's foolish. And something about my personality is I am very, I really want to be seen as wise. And especially for whatever reason, like haven't cared as much about the opinion of my peers as I have about people in authority over me or people that are older than me. And I saw the generation above me be so disappointed in my generation. And I wanted to be one of the people they were like, you give me hope for the next generation.
Right.
And so even though I wanted to go to college, it really never actually crossed my mind to do it, because I was like, the right thing to do is build my Amway business.
Right.
And so it took me a couple of years after high school, because I really didn't want to do it. So it took me a couple of years to be like, all right, well, I got to do something. So, because I was a live-in nanny. And so then I finally started, and I really did it. Like, did actually the teachings. I didn't like mess around. Like, I was actually they have something called core, which is all the things that you have to do if you're going to build your business. And I did it for a solid, I think, like year and a half. I was really doing everything. I was like showing plans.
I'm like, what does this look like?
What does core involve?
Yeah, what does this look like? I'm also curious, which you don't have to go into it right now, but I am curious too, when you're talking about this identity, what did that look like practically in your home? You know, like, are you sitting around listening to teachings together? Like, kind of what is that?
Yeah. So I'll answer that question first, and we'll get back to core. So what it practically looked like, and this is, looking back, there is some stuff that is genuinely hilarious. Like, I have a great sense of humor about it. So all can say anything and it won't offend me, because there is some stuff that I'm like, oh, hell no, we didn't do that. Like, every once in a while, like, a memory will pop up and I'm like, we did that.
Yeah, like you've buried it, and then it just comes, sure, of course.
Framed photos of the diamonds on our wall.
Like in your kitchen or something? Like you had photos framed of these diamond members?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, my dad was like, and to be fair, I definitely had so much anxiety. Like, I thought long and hard about coming on this, because I was like, this is going to be out in the world. Like, what if my family hears this? My parents are still very heavily involved. But then I was like, nobody in my family is going to find this podcast.
We'll keep it under wraps. And we so appreciate you being willing to come on, by the way. It means a lot.
Of course. But, I don't think you guys have a lot of crossover audience with Ben Shapiro. So
yeah,
like, not normally.
Not yet. But, there's always time.
But anyway, so practically what it looked like was a really big part of core is listening to a audio recording every day. So when I first joined, it was tapes. We loved to listen to business tapes in the car. And actually, as a kid, I loved it. There's something called, so there are like teaching ones, like seminars, and then there are rallies, which is people telling their story of how they...
Motivational, yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And I loved those. And there were some people that were really, really funny. And actually, I'm super weird in that I absolutely love public speaking. So listening to these public speakers was fascinating to me. Sure. And also being like, one day I can do that. I can stand on a stage in front of thousands of people and just tell my story. Like, it was just a dream for me. Like, I remember we would just, even being in like buckled in like a 5-point harness, like listening to CDs. I grew up in Montana, so we did a lot of driving between my grandparents' house and our house, which was 5 hours away. And so we would just listen to these all the time. We talked about it. It was like our family business. I remember going on a hike, and when you hike in Montana, you have to make sure you make a lot of noise so you don't scare the bears. And so we came up with a song that we would sing. And it was, I don't even think I could make it through it now, but it was like, when daddy goes out to show the plan, hurrah, hurrah. And we're like singing these songs that we made up for it. We talk about it. It was like, that's kind of like the culture, the family culture in like a religion.
Sure.
Like,
right.
This is what we talk about every day. This is who we are. This is our family vision. That's a lot of what was talked about on the CDs too. Like, this is a legacy business. This is a family thing.
Did your parents have any other jobs, or were they doing Amway like full time?
Yeah. So that's another weird part of my story, is as involved and like completely sold out to this as we were. something that really scarred me and I had to really work through as an adult was my parents were never really successful. I have no idea what the finances of theirs looked like. They were at a level that's called platinum. But that's like just like the baseline level. Like at that level is where you get to wear a name tag at the functions. And so people, like, everyone knew who my dad was. My mom's a much more quiet person, would really keep to herself. So like people knew who she was, but she was not like, my dad's like a really outgoing, extremely charismatic person. And so everybody knew who he was. And that made me feel really good. Like I felt really important. Like I'd walk around and be like, I'm Greg's daughter. And I would look like my whole family, like I could never convince anyone I'm not, like we are all just the Brady Bunch.
Carbon copies. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's crazy. So sorry. I
was wondering if they have any other jobs, or was that kind of like the main source of income?
My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And so I never knew my mom to have employment outside. She always worked within the home and then like did the books on the business and everything. And then my dad is a really successful salesman. He sells appliances, still does to this day. And then the business was something like on the side. And I think honestly, if I were to guess, I would say my parents probably made enough where they were like kind of breaking even or turning a little bit of a profit, but it was never anything to like live off of or anything.
Do you think that the reason you said they're even now very heavily involved, do you think it came down for them? Obviously you can't speak to their experience, but on having this camaraderie and like a tight knit like culture, because otherwise why would you continue pursuing it for decades if you're not turning a major profit?
No, 100%. And that's something I've had to think a lot about, where I'm like, what, like, why? Like it never worked for you. And for me, after a year and a half of like churning, and I was like, I'm doing everything I'm taught and I'm going nowhere. And also I'm like, I hate this. This sucks. And so I think for my dad now, I want to be careful telling my parents.
Sure, of course. You don't know their experience. Yeah.
And there's a lot interwoven with some mental health issues, as well as there's a lot intertwined with like growing up Christian. So there are some things where I'm like, this was Amway, this was Christianity, this was mental health, this was all of it together.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I think the biggest thing, especially for my dad, because my dad has really always been the charge. I think my mom is very much just along for the ride in a lot of ways. But he gets a lot of respect there. They really talk you up. And this was something that I really had to, because I grew up feeling like I had a great childhood. Mm-hmm. And then when I came into adulthood, I was like, wait a minute. And it took me a lot of time to square away when like counselors and friends and people, I would tell them stories about my life. They're like, that's abuse. And I was like, but I didn't feel abused. So no. But it took me a while to realize that like abuse environments can be positive. They can feel positive. If the thing that people are really encouraging in you is something that's hurtful and harmful to you. And so my dad is extremely well respected in that arena. He's really highly spoken of, even though I wouldn't say that he's like super successful in the business. But he's talked about as this strong, like he stays at it no matter what, he's faithful. And I think they also talk about like, this one leader always talks about snip, snip. Like that was his thing. He always say snip, snip. If someone talks negatively about you, get out, snip, snip. Like that was like a thing. He would always like a shorthand for just cut people out of your life. And so when you've been involved that long and you've alienated that many people and it's extremely like what they teach you to do makes you very vulnerable and it makes you in need of them, because when you have told people off and snipped them out of your life and said really weird and outlandish things to people, you don't have community outside of them to speak of. So then even if you're not being successful, it's like, well, this is all I have, right? It's really hard to leave abusive relationships because if you don't have something outside of it to grasp onto.
Right.
When I left, I was terrified because I knew I was like, I'm going to lose everything. And I did. And I think people say like, oh, your worst fears won't come true. Every one of them did, except that my husband, we were just dating at the time. And when I went to tell him, I was already in love with him. He was actually on my downline. So he was still involved and I was in love at this point. And I knew, I was like, he's going to continue. I had no idea that he was having doubts as well. And so I was like, I'm going to tell him I'm leaving and he's going to break up with me. And when we were at the restaurant, it's weird. I'm not like a talk to myself sort of person. But I was so nervous that I got up and I went to the bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I said out loud, you're going to be okay. Like he's going to break up with you and you're going to be okay. And when I told him, he actually was silent for a really long time. He's super introverted and he thinks a lot about his thoughts and I'm not. And so I'm like, speak.
Yes.
just break up with me and be done with it. Yeah.
He finally was like, me too. Like, I'm also. Wow. And then I was like, well, good news, because we get to stay together, but also you need to know that a shit and hellstorm is going to rain down on you because you're going to be blamed for me leaving.
Whoa.
It was like, yeah, I know. And that's exactly what happened.
Do you think that's because he was under you on the downline?
Yes and no. So this was another really terrible thing that was always said. So I think from what I understand, a lot of other MLMs are pretty female dominated, at least worldwide, is very male dominated. And so having a young female was very, I was like a celebrity. I had done nothing. I had exactly one downline who had exactly one downline. Okay. This was the entirety of my business.
Right.
And everybody knew, like there's a messaging system called Communicate, and my Kates were passed around by the big head honcho shared them out because it was like, here's this young on fire gal who's doing it and she's building a business and she's like a 18-year-old girl, which in and of itself is a big fat issue. I'll talk about some predatory situations I got put in because of that. But so the reason that I knew it was going to come down on him is because this was my whole life growing up. Sure. I, again, wanted to please the older generation. So I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And I always talked about becoming a diamond. And then you're supposed to counsel about absolutely everything. And when I met my husband, I was like, I showed him the plan and everything. So we met, showed him the plan. And within just a little bit, I was like, ooh, I'm really interested in this guy. And, he was interested in me and we started dating and I counseled. Now, a lot of people would counsel if they were date or not. I was never like that. I was like, oh, screw that. I'm an adult. I'm going to do this. But I was like, how can I do this right? Because he is my downline. Like, how do I do this correctly? And the big head honcho guy counseled back and he's like, I've seen this happen all the time. You're going to meet a boy and you're going to get stupid and you're going to leave and you're going to lose your dream and you're going to lose it. And you're going to fall in love and he's going to steal you away. And I was like, that's not going to happen to me. And so then when I, on my own at that time was like, I need to leave. There was the fear of losing him, but then there was also I knew it would protect him if he stayed. But then when he was like, no, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, oh shit, you're going to get blamed for everything. You're going to get blamed for all my choices and all the changes I go through are all going to be put on you. And he was like, yeah, I know. And it's exactly what happened. So
even just the foundation of you saying that you knew when you told him that you were leaving the business, that he was going to break up with you, just that goes to show that's so much more religion affiliated. Like, oh, you're telling someone I'm not a Christian anymore and I leave, versus in, let's just say another business. Let's just say Evan and I, we work at the same PR firm. And one day I tell him, I'm going to leave the PR firm and I'm going to go work somewhere else. Like I would never think, oh, he's going to break up with me because I'm doing something else.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and also I actually had recently listened to the episode where Jess, your Becca interviews you. And I was so moved in so many ways. And one of them was when you said that you finally told Evan, you're like, I can't do this. Like whatever happens by me telling you, like I need to tell you, and come what may, like it's going to happen. And that's what I knew. And I wanted to leave. I left pretty quickly once I made the decision, but I was in denial for a really long time because I knew I'm going to lose everything. And I grew up incredibly tightly knit with my family. What I have learned is called enmeshed with my family. And I did it. It broke my relationship with both of my parents. I have come to mend my relationship with my dad. And my mom and I we're still getting there. But, and that's mostly not Amway. That's mostly other stuff with my mom. But I knew it would break my parents' hearts because for them, it was their mission. And it is so much more helpful to look at it like a religion. Don't look at it like a business, because it's not. It's a religion where people's finances are tied to each other.
Which that, I guess, sort of falls under the definition of a cult. Because like I was looking up the characteristics last night. Like there's kind of 3 defining characteristics. You've got 1, the group is focused on a living leader to whom members display excessively zealous, unquestioning commitment. Would you see that? Like, do you see that with the leaders of Amway?
100%. And that was like the one like thread that got pulled that completely undid the whole tapestry for me, was that it's like when you join, you go through the process. So they've kind of changed how you recruit people. You take them through a process because it kind of emotionally, or it's like kind of like a psychological trick to make them feel like they're trying to earn something. And you say like progressively, like more extreme things that we believe throughout. And I think it's like you, whether consciously or subconsciously, what it is you need to get to a place, or they need to get you to a place where you don't question anything, because the leaders are infallible, and it's very much a culture of haves and have nots. You counsel about everything from how to raise your child to your marriage, everything, which is absurd to think that just because someone makes a decent amount of money means they're great at raising kids. In fact, like, would you counsel, So you counsel about everything, and which really psychologically makes you feel like these leaders are infallible, and everything they say, you just take at face value. But I think most of the people I've talked to that have left, they have the one thing that they were like, I couldn't get myself to believe that. Because there's a lot of stuff they would say that I would be like, oh, I didn't think that, but you just are in denial. You're like, but they're right. So I must be wrong. But each person has that one thing. There's like a lot of little things that they're like, oh, well, I guess I'm wrong. Oh, I guess I'm wrong. But then there's that one thing that hits that you're like, I can't do that. I cannot. And then once you go, well, if I can't believe them on that, then they are fallible. And then everything goes up for question. And then that's when the house of cards comes tumbling down. And for me, it was when the biggest leader, I don't know, I don't know if I could get a defamation suit for this, but the biggest leader, he is like the Godhead. Like everybody believes everything. And looking back, my mom really didn't like him. I don't want to go to another meeting of his. He says the same thing every time. And we're like, you're just not bought in enough. And now looking back, I'm like, I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry.
Right? He is crazy. I'm so sorry. It wasn't you, it was him. But the thing that for me was like, I was like, oh, hell no, I cannot get on board with that, was he shit talked his own daughter from stage to hundreds of people who knew exactly who she is and was. And she had gotten married, and it was like, he talked about it all the time, like $3 million wedding, and talked about it so much. And then she got divorced within like a month or two,
oh, dear.
which no, right? You know.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Nobody knows what happened.
Sure,
Of course.
sure.
I have no idea what happened behind closed doors. And
Even if there was no reason, if someone wants to get divorced, you get divorced.
Right. Also, it doesn't matter. Exactly. Like, also, it doesn't matter. Right. Like, it doesn't. But he took her ex-husband's side very clearly, would still call her ex-husband my son.
Ooh.
And she went to college. He has 3 kids. All were involved with the business. Only one of them, her, went to college. And he had said from stage, he goes, we have 3 kids. We've only sent one to college, and that's the only one we have issues with.
Oh, dear.
And I was so livid when I heard that. As the exact same demographic, that man's only daughter. I am my dad's only daughter, which to be fair, my dad would have never said anything like that. Like all that thing, like my dad would have never. And I think that was something that was so hard for my parents, is they were told all these extreme things about people who quit. And then their daughter did it. And they're like, but I can't believe those things.
Right.
You know, and I think my dad has since said, he's like, I felt so hurt and disappointed when you quit, but I didn't want to. And I was like, I know you didn't. Like, I know you so desperately didn't want to feel the way you did, but you did. And that's kind of what was going on in his mind. And so I just gave him time, and we've come back and it's all good. But that for me was, I was like, you can't stand on a stage in front of hundreds of people and shit talk your daughter when it doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter why she got divorced. She did. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much you spent on her wedding. That was your choice. Mm-hmm. And for you to basically disown her and talk crap about her, and that disgusted me.
Yeah,
and that was the one thread where I was like, that's clearly wrong. Mm-hmm. So then my brain went back and thought of all the things he ever said that I was like, that's an extreme thing to say. And I was like, no, I don't agree with like any of that. Mm-hmm. And if I can't be in denial about that anymore. And that's when it all came tumbling down for me.
Do you think there was any of that unraveling that happened with your parents when you left? Do you think there was any maybe any points when you left? I just wonder if there was encouragement by your parents, peers, et cetera, to kind of like talk shit on you, like leaving. And I wonder if they had any sort of experience like that.
I have no idea, because I never came back. Although for about a year afterwards, anytime my mom was at like a meeting or a major function, she did like text me and be like, I miss when you were here. I miss when we were all together. So that was tough. That was really hard for me, but I don't know. The short answer is I don't know, but I know my parents enough to know they would never shit talk me. They just wouldn't. And that's actually been something that I've been like, give me a little space in my adult life. And I even felt like my parents, I was like, you guys like almost worship me. Like I make mistakes, like give me space. So that was never an issue with my parents. And I never was worried about that. I just knew it would be really hard for them, like that cognitive dissonance of having people that they respect and feel are their leaders. And when I say this, I really do mean more my dad saying these things about quitters. And Brad even said, like, I get people who don't get it. They're just dumb. They just never get it.
Right.
But the worst people are people who get it and then don't, and then leave. So it was like, I was the worst of all the persona non gratas. Mm-hmm. And I know there's no good reason to quit. There's no reason to leave. And so I knew what was being said about me and my kind. Mm-hmm. And I knew that was something that my dad and my mom had to sit through. And I think that was also very hard for them, because they were like, well, no, like, we don't think that about our daughter. We like very much love her. And I know that my parents really are, it's just really hard for them to be like, I just never pictured your life this way, which I'm like, listen, I'm like gainfully employed in a really stable relationship, like doing really well, but it's just hard because those things aren't valued. Like I got a job at Microsoft. And I was so proud, and I like called my family, and the answer was like, "Oh, interesting." I was like, I don't even have an undergraduate degree, and I got a job at Microsoft. Like, this is a big deal. Like, listen to me, but it's just not valued.
Well, how do you think people are convinced to stay if they're losing, if they are literally like struggling financially because they're continuing to maintain ties with Amway?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. I think everybody has a different reason.
Sure.
But mostly all those sacrifices are actually talked about. And this is something that's so insidious. It's talked about in a really glorifying way. I remember taking notes.
Also very religious.
Yeah, totally. Like self-sacrifice. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember taking notes of the like terrible things about my car or like the shitty things in my life to share from stage one day as like a badge of honor. I remember being like, my car, like the worse your car was before you went diamond or ruby or whatever, was like this huge badge of honor. It was like, I remember, this is so ridiculous. That thing got like the daughter of, who's like,
yes,
ultra rich and whatever. Well, I mean, we don't know how much money he actually. That's the other thing. We always say multi-millionaire, and now I live in the Seattle area, and I'm like, who is it though? I'm like, okay. But everybody was praising her because her dad bought her a car, as millionaire parents do when their kids turn of age, buy a car. This is a normal thing. But she sold it, and she drove an old Astro van, and everybody was like, oh, she's so like, that's such a good thing to do. Like, good for her. And, I remember my brothers and I were like, oh yeah, our crappy cars are such a badge of honor. Like, And I remember like taking notes. I had a note on my phone for the longest thing about like the weird things my car did, because I was like, which so dangerous to have just like this 18-year-old girl who's supposed to be out all hours of the night prospecting strangers to get into a business opportunity. I have two very sketchy situations that put me in that I was talking about with my husband even last night. And we're both just like, yeah, that was really bad. And I was just like, yeah, like you just talk to strangers.
Yeah. What's the expectations of how you're supposed to recruit others? Obviously you only found your husband in the recruitment, but that's actually pretty good. So you can probably thank Amway for that, to be honest, for the love of your life.
Oh my gosh, seriously. I'm like, that was the one thing. And he had like got in, was involved for a little bit, and he's super introverted. And I remember his parents, oh my gosh, my in-laws are amazing. His parents were like, just very like, his dad knew. He was like, the way he talked about you, he kept talking about his mentor. And I was like, what's his name? Is it a girl's name? Because I bet it is. So he was in and then met me, and then pretty quickly was like, this is not as advertised. This was nothing you said it would be. And I was like, I know.
Sorry about that.
Sorry about that. But I'll marry you.
Yeah.
So CORE is, it's like, I think it's 10 steps, and I won't be able to remember all of them now. Thank God. But it's like, if you do all of these every day, if you're CORE, that's what's going to get you to diamond. So if there was ever any point where like, I'm not making any progress, it's like, well, are you CORE? And you're like, yes, every day for 7 months, except for one day. And they're like, that one day you would have met your platinum leg that day if you hadn't gone out. And I actually remember my dad said that after like 10 years of just like churning the wheel, he like called his upline and was like, just tell me if this won't work for me. He's honestly, if I'm one of those people it won't work for, just tell me now and I'll leave. I'll be done. And there are a few things that I'm actually angry about. And this is one of them. Is his upline, who had no financial vested interest in him because he was so far ahead that it really wouldn't affect his income at all, said to my dad, like, it works for everyone. You just have to keep your hand to the plow. And that just makes me so angry because the only reason he would say that is to keep up the lie that it is for everyone, you can't ever tell someone like, maybe this isn't a wise choice for you. Right. All of the evidence said it wasn't a wise choice for my family, but your lie would be exposed if you lovingly and kindly told this person, like, this isn't for you.
Right.
You know? But yeah, core is like listening. You have to listen to a CD every day. You have to be on Kate every day, which is Communicate, which is like the like kind of internal app. One piece is there's something called photo streams. They want, and this is kind of newer, but it was when I left, which has been several years now, but they want everybody to have an iPhone so that they can do like a photo share. And then the diamonds, to keep you motivated, post pictures of their lifestyle and all the rich things they have, which, to be fair, most of them have other ventures because most multimillionaires kind of diversify their income stream. Of course. So I'm like, what's that? But okay. Which you are heavily encouraged not to do at lower levels. In fact, you were encouraged to not even save for retirement. Or cash out your retirement if you needed to pay for something. Going to major, going to major functions. And you're supposed to drop the message, which is, basically present kind of, put a little bait out for someone, see if they bite 10 times a day to 10 people a day.
Oh my gosh, that is just so much.
Oh yes. Oh, it's so much. And they always say that this is the problem, is it's presented like you can become a multimillionaire in your spare time with like 10 hours a week and have freedom. But the people who do that, it is their lives. Right. We would be getting Kates on Christmas Day. And it's like, it's funny because they talk about companies like having your soul. And I get that Microsoft has like a phenomenal culture, but I'm like, when I'm not working, I'm not working. My brain is shut off. I got COVID. Like my husband works there full time. I'm contract. So I'm actually on one of my 6-month hiatuses, but my husband works full time and he got COVID and he just like, for like 2 weeks was like, guys, I can't work. And they were like, yeah. Sure. You heal, do you, still got paid through it, was able to, right? And he wasn't worried about being like, my business is going to stall out. Like they tell you, don't go on vacations. Don't, like, it's all about being single-minded. And it really siphons off your life until everything is about that. So that's why you can't leave, because you don't have anything outside of it. Right.
I was going to say, did you have any friends who weren't part of Amway?
Oh, heck no.
Okay. That made me make sense.
Not. Although, I mean, that was also kind of like the weird thing, right? Is I cut myself off from all my friends because when they all went to college, it was too hard for me. I deleted my Facebook. I deleted my Instagram because
you wanted that. Yeah.
I couldn't watch it. It was too hard for me. And I remember like crying to my brother and he was like, just think about it. In 4 years, they'll be graduating with a useless degree. And you'll be like driving a brand new Mercedes or Escalade or whatever you want because you're going to be rich. I'm like, okay. And he's like, you'll be influential and you'll, and I'm like, oh, okay. That never happened. I drive a Mazda.
Are your brothers still in it?
No, that's the other really annoying thing is, so my oldest brother, he, so I'm the youngest. So it goes, we'll call them brother A and brother B for their own protection. So brother A, the eldest, and then brother B, and then me, Kirsten. And so the eldest brother, he actually started as soon as he turned 18. Actually, as soon as you turn 16, there are some things that you can do, which don't get me started on that. We'll just call it an even 18. Right. He's still in high school. In fact, he was in the Great Falls Tribune. I grew up in Montana, remember, pretty small town. And I recently found this article. I was looking through my grandma's old stuff and recently found this article where he was like, see that truck over there? I'm going to buy that cash in a year. Okay. Just really weird, cringy stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was very involved for like a couple of years, but it was just very messy. You're like 18 and you're being told all these extreme ideologies and then you're just parroting them back out the other side without, digesting them in any way. And then my middle brother, he joined the military, which is very highly well respected there, which is something I appreciate, right? Like, respecting the armed forces. Yeah, that's great. Mm-hmm. So he did that. And my eldest brother, brother A, I think he's at the point where, like, if you asked him, he wouldn't ever be like, yeah, I'm not really ever doing that. But he never like made a clean, like, I'm stopping, I'm leaving.
He just like ghosted a little bit.
Yeah. So it's funny because I took all the heat, but I was the only one who actually said, I'm doing it, and then I'm not doing it. He sort of did it and then sort of faded out. Mm-hmm. And part of that was because he wound up having a daughter. And so I think that's when he kind of faded out. And then now he is doing something totally different. So, but he's kind of still around where it's like, he still buys products. He still supports my parents and, whatnot. And has never said, I won't do it. I've said, like, I'm never doing this. This is not my plan. Mm-hmm. He's still like, oh, I'm
right.
And
one
then
foot in, 1
B,
foot out. Yeah.
Exactly. And then brother B, he has never in any way done it, but goes to all the functions and stuff like that. But he joined the military, and then he was a police officer. And now he's going back into the military. And he always talks about it like I'm going to build my business one day. So,
okay. It'll happen one day.
Exactly. So he like keeps his one day card, and it keeps the demons at bay.
Right.
I'm like, I will never. And they attack. So yeah.
Okay, broads, one more quick pause. I love elevating everyday, regular experiences. For example, when I binge watch trash TV, I want to do it in satin pajamas. When I'm sick in bed, I'm ordering fresh squeezed orange juice for the extra dose of vitamin C. And when I'm eating everyday dinner staples like pizza or pasta, I am not using old run-of-the-mill hot sauce. No way. In our house, we are truff people. It doesn't get much more luxurious than truff hot sauce. Oh my God, infused with 100% real black winter truffle or white truffle. I mean, come on, broads, we have been preaching the gospel of truff for forever. There is nothing that tastes better than this hot sauce.
Okay, so the Truff Hotter hot sauce. That's how I was introduced to the entire line of the Truff products. But I found out about all the other amazing things that Truff has to offer. And somehow I can't love them. I just keep... No. I was going to say I can't love them more. No, I keep finding new ways to love them more. They have hot sauces. They have pasta sauces. They have mayo even. And truffle oil. I cook everything in the truffle oil, and it elevates any meal that I make. It is incredible. If you ever make a dinner at home, just add the truffle oil. Trust me, it's going to be 1,000 times better. No question. Plus a little bread balsamic truffle oil. Oh my God. Yeah, just trust me. Try it.
Also, you have to check out the Truff gift sets, which I think make the perfect host gift if I'm invited to a barbecue at your place this summer. Just know you are getting a Truff set. Also, by the way, I gave my dad a Truff gift set for Father's Day last year, and he absolutely loved it, and now he's completely hooked. Welcome to the club. Truff is already loved by some of the biggest names in pop culture, like, Oprah. It was featured on her handpicked gift list 3 times already and was named bestseller of the year on the Today Show. I think that speaks for itself. This stuff is the best.
Get 15% off site-wide with promo code chatty at truff.com. That's 15% off everything at truff, TRUFF, as in fire.com, promo code chatty.
So broads, you may know this, but I have been really trying my best to make sure to get in my daily fruits and veggies these days, which the CDC says should equal about 6 cups a day. That's not an easy number to hit. I don't care how healthy you eat. Well, Brick House is making it a whole lot easier to get yours in with their Field of Greens.
Oh yeah, Field of Greens is awesome. It's so funny because Gray, I showed it to him and he was like, wait, I can get like all of the greens I need by drinking this. And I was like, okay, well, kind of, yeah, basically. It's a full spectrum of essential vegetables and fruits, plus science-backed herbs and prebiotics. It's all the benefits of eating a variety of whole fruits and veggies in one easy-to-eat or drink powder. I like how versatile it is. If I'm in a big rush, I can just mix it with a glass of water first thing in the morning, or I can get fancy with it. I can add it to a smoothie or on top of an acai bowl. I mean, there's a lot of tasty possibilities.
The biggest thing that I noticed when I started taking Field of Greens is how quickly I saw a shift in my body, primarily my energy levels. I just felt like I could power through a whole day without any crashing or need for an afternoon nap or caffeine kick. And now I'm sure to start every morning off with my Field of Greens. And like I was saying before too, like it just makes it so much more simple to know that you're getting in all of those nutrients that you need.
Join us and take Field of Greens. To help you get started, we got you 15% off your first order and another 10% off when you subscribe for recurring orders. That's quite a load of savings. Visit fieldofgreens.com and use promo code chatty. That's fieldofgreens.com, promo code chatty. Fieldofgreens.com, promo code chatty.
Okay, wait. So back to core though. So you're doing that every day, and then what are these situations when you don't have friends that are outside of Amway? So who are you supposed to be recruiting?
Yeah, that's actually this thing that's so different about it. Like you won't see, not for worldwide, maybe other lines of affiliation, but not for worldwide. You won't ever see those like social media posts.
Okay.
In fact, there was a guy who was like told to leave. Which I don't know all the details about it. I like kind of heard it secondhand.
Sure.
So I can't really say much. But from what I understand, there was someone who was told to leave because he was counseling his downline, like to use social media.
Okay.
And that was something that was really, really discouraged. So you're not going to see like
messages.
Do you know why it was discouraged?
Yeah, because they really wanted to paint this picture that it's like a legitimate business.
Okay.
And so those things that are really rinky-dink, except having, meetings at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday in some junky apartment. That they still did. But everything else was like, this is a legitimate business thing. So you're actually not really encouraged to like show the plan or like recruit your circle of people that you already know. It's like, no, you go out and you meet people.
So how are you doing that?
Yeah, striking up a conversation with everyone all the freaking time. So the guilt of like, you're never supposed to be at home. You're never supposed to be doing, like you always want to be out and you're constantly talking to people. And I'd strike up conversations with everyone, you know, in the grocery store line and the Starbucks you're just always out and you're constantly trying to like engage people. And to this day, like, don't talk to me in public. Like I actually will walk around with headphones in because I'm like listening to a podcast because I'm like, the freedom. And I'm a super extroverted person.
Sure, but you're like, this is now not my business.
PTSD. I'm like,
sure.
Don't even talk to me. I got prospected a few times and now I never do, even though I'm in the greater Seattle area. So there's a lot of them around. I'm like, nobody does. And I pride myself on it because I just have that kind of face where I'm like, don't approach me.
Right.
And then also I just use the hot button of, my husband and I both work at Microsoft and that shuts it down.
Yeah, then you're done.
Because they're like, oh, they treat you well and you're paid well. Never mind.
Yeah, they'll move on. I had a couple friend of Evan and mine who we were very close to who years ago they snipped us out of their life because we wouldn't join Amway.
Yeah.
And said that we had a loser lifestyle because we wouldn't join Amway. But I know that their regular thing was like, there was like the coffee shop below their apartment that like every day they would get fully dressed in like very expensive clothes, sharp watch, shoes, and they would just sit at the coffee shop all day and strike up conversations with other couples, like young couples. And then like kind of become friends with them. And then eventually they would like join their
So were they getting
downline.
people to join? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many.
Right.
But I knew at least a couple people of other friends that we knew who had joined them. But a lot of it had to do with the fact too that, you know, they were a very attractive couple. He had been in a very cool business, which he completely cut out from his life to do this, which is one of the reasons that they snipped us out, because at one point Evan had a really honest, they were like our best friends. He had a very honest conversation with him where he was like, dude, I get you're doing this other thing, but also you're so gifted at this. Are you just gonna like, are you done with that? Like that makes me sad. Like this, you've worked your whole life for this. And they were just like, you're jealous of us. You don't understand what we're building here, and that was done. But they have, they cool post business or past businesses, very attractive, and young at the time. This is when we were younger. And I know that they were encouraged, and I know this because of friends who had joined them on their downline and since left because they started to get wigged out by some of the things. They had said that they were encouraged to, buy things that were out of their price range to present a certain way, that they were super successful, to try to draw in they were told, attractive, young, cool people.
That specific thing, all of that rings true except the buying things out of your price range. The sect I found myself in was very much like Dave Ramsey, which honestly, do you have another 7 hours? I have so much to say about that, dude.
Sure.
Get me started. But it was,
I'm sure. And I think again, it was this specific location in Orange County where they were. So it was very much like needing to present a certain way.
Successful.
And, going and speaking at events about success that I know for a fact hadn't happened, but because again they were an attractive young couple, they put them in front of thousands of people saying how successful they were, when I know like for a fact nothing had come in yet. In fact, there was
that was also me. I was talked about really highly.
Right, exactly what you were saying. It made me think.
Cute young lady who was, on fire and sold out, quote unquote. And there was no real success for me at all. I had exactly one guy who I sponsored, one guy who had sponsored one guy. And then I married that second guy. I got what I came for.
Well, how were you coached for that conversation to go? Like, this is what I'm so curious about, because you're having a conversation in line with someone at the grocery store, at the coffee shop. How do you turn this person from like a prospect or whatever into like an actual? How are you supposed to turn that?
I wonder if I could remember. Really, what you do is you try to just get them to ask what you do. You just try. And in America, that is so easy.
Sure.
Because it is like,
it's one of the first things
we
ask.
Tell me what you do for a living, and then I'll decide how I feel about you. Like,
I'm going to make a judgment call.
Yeah. And I mean, like, you guys are like in LA, I'm in the greater Seattle area. Like, obviously, right? Big time. It's like, tell me what you do so I can tell you how I feel about you.
Yes.
Right.
And so it's just asking, like, what do you do? And I would say, let's see if I can remember what I always said. I found recently a bunch of notebooks where I wrote this stuff down, and I was like, burn it all. Like, I was like, this is gone. I don't even want to keep this for sentimental reasons. But I would say, I'm trying to remember.
Like, you said, like, I'm a business owner.
That are, I'm being trained and coached in business. I have this really successful couple who are, looking to expand, blah, blah, blah. And then you just,
really? That's interesting.
So dropping the message is just basically kind of making it sound like you're being mentored by these really successful business people who have some projects. There's actually starting a project here in the greater Seattle area, and they were looking for some people. And, I went through a process and interviewed with them and was able to gain and earn their mentorship. And you just kind of leave it because that's like a weird fucking thing to say.
Right. You're like, what do you mean? Yeah. People are going to ask more questions.
Right, people are looking, right? That's like dropping the message. So you want to do that 10 times a day, where you just kind of leave it there. And then some people are like, what? And then also I was 18. So people who are like, I think I was like 19 or 20 by the time I actually started it, to be honest. But like some people were like, what? And then people that are my age that like don't know anything about the world are like, that sounds cool.
Right.
So they're not like, that sounds weird, but that does sound cool.
Sure.
Like,
sure.
Oh, really? And so then you're like, yeah. And then typically they talk about doing the like Columbo, right? Where you come back and you're like, actually, I mean, they're looking to expand. I have no idea if you would qualify or not. Like, it's a pretty extensive process, but like, if you want and you're looking, like, I could take your number and mention it to them. And, if they have openings or they're looking to interview more people, I could see if I could get your foot in the door.
Right.
So it's, again, see, this is how it's different from other MLMs, where it's like, oh, and then you try to get them in and like, and this isn't how it was 35, 40 years ago when my dad joined. back then they called prospecting spearing.
Oh my God.
Scary.
Predatory. Which it is. And so then if people call back and then, that's when, take them through the process and you sit them down and talk to them.
It's interesting because I heard someone say something, they basically summarized it like how Amway in particular works, but MLMs as a whole is like, we all know, us like lay people, normal people, we all know that like rich people have like a secret way that they are, they have like the in on how to make money. And in a lot of ways it's true. Like just learning more about how stuff works, you're like, damn, if you can get in with like this kind of person, if you can make this kind of investment, you can set yourself up for passive income in a totally legal, like viable, real way if you have a certain amount of like investments up front, whatever. So there are like these tricks of being rich, but they described it like people know that there are these tricks to getting rich, but they don't know enough about those tricks to know what's like legit and what's not. And so that's how people can kind of get roped into this kind of thing where they're like, oh, maybe this is like the kind of trick that rich people are using to get more money. They don't actually understand enough about the systems, but they know enough to know that people use these kind of like, different ways to make passive income, etc., but they don't have a full enough understanding to understand this is not a good way to like get passive income.
Right. And they do use really like legitimate business words that get you, right? It's like a wolf in sheep's clothing, not to get too Christian, but they do use those terms that make you feel like, right? Like there would be times I would talk and like adults would be like, whoa, you're saying a lot, right? And I would always say, I'm really entrepreneurial.
Right.
I'm not. I love my 9 to 5. Yeah. I love that.
I don't want to be a business owner. Right.
I remember one of my brothers was like, everybody should own your own business because you could get fired any day. And I was like, well, if you own your own business, like that shit
is extremely unstable,
i.e. COVID.
Yeah.
But also if you get fired, you could just get a job somewhere else. Like,
totally.
So easy. If you lose your business overnight, you can't just build one really quickly.
Right. That's the other. I was just gonna say that's the other fallacy, right? Like not everyone is meant to be a business owner. Like not everyone should be. And the reason I say that is just because there is a lot that I've just seen firsthand, a lot of undertaking that is really overwhelming, stressful,
You're
whatever.
A super legitimate business owner. Yeah.
Right. And or just watching it, with my boyfriend and being like, damn, like not everyone is cut out for this. And I would not encourage everyone to do this because it can be extremely unstable and really stressful and not fun. So I think selling that idea too of like everyone should operate their own business and be their own boss. Like, no, I don't think that everyone should be a corporate slave to the man. But at the same time, like that's probably just objectively like not a good idea for everyone.
Oh, absolutely. And also you're not a business owner. You're at best an independent contractor. Like you don't have any control over anything. You can't control the prices of anything. You aren't controlling the product. Like you're controlling nothing, right?
Yeah.
But what's different about Amway, I think, and why it has such a different flavor, because to be fair, versus like LuLaRoe or Arbonne or any other number of MLMs, what's different about those is they're really single product or product line focus, and it's about selling the product.
Right.
At least in worldwide, we never talked about the product. And if it was like a passing thing. And someone even said, if the product was, if I could sell bags of flamin' poop and it would make me rich, I would do it. Like it was really a throwaway. And to be fair, Amway, the company, does have some like really good products. Like some of them are like their soap or whatnot are like actually flagship, like objectively good products. But they have like pretty much everything you would need for your home. So what the plan was all the things you're already buying, just buy from yourself, just switch them over. So really they talk about free enterprise, but it's the complete opposite, because you are taking what like your buying power as a consumer is totally taken away. Like, I remember one time I was living on my own at this point, and my parents were at my house, and I had bought some makeup that was not Amway makeup. And I didn't know what was in the package. Yeah. At the time, I was just opening up a package, which honestly, like, burned me at the stake. I should not have done that. I should have just kept my secret. It would have probably been less shocking to my family if I opened up a dildo right then and there. But I opened it up, and it was, my mom was like, "What's that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's just some makeup thing I bought." And she goes, "You shouldn't be buying that." Okay. Which is funny because at the time I had already quit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But so you just switch your buying. So that's kind of what the plan is, right? Is like everything you're already buying, just buy it from yourself, buy these products. And that's where it gets, I think, in a lot of ways, super predatory too, because you're like the diamond vitamin plan. You are literally coached because most of these people have not two dimes to rub together. And whatever they do have, they're pouring into going to functions, into products, and all this stuff, which I recently found out the diamonds profit from, not just the products, but like the training materials, which I'm like,
right. Yeah, no, I listened to a podcast. They were they were like, basically people can make their living, a huge living, not just off of like the product or recruitment, but actually the materials themselves, like selling books, selling tickets, whatever. And someone could make a whole career off of just being a motivational speaker, basically. Yeah,
which is what I wanted. I was like, sign me up.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to try to get married to a young guy who's going to do all the work, and then we're going to get rich, and then I'm going to stand on stage and talk.
So when there's like the big rallies, do you have to pay to get a ticket to go to like the events?
You pay for everything, hotel, everything. Like, you pay for it all. And if you can't afford it, you are told to sell everything, which is funny because all these upline diamonds could pay for everyone, but they don't. You have to, and that's the sacrifice. They're like, we can't make the tickets free because the sacrifice, that's what makes it, like, that's what gives it value. And I remember there are times where it's like, someone tells you they can't afford it. Are they sleeping on a mattress? Like, you were told to like sell your mattress, which who's going to buy your mattress? I'm like,
oh my God.
$50 on offer up maybe.
If you're buying secondhand, like, no.
It's just when you parallel it then with other businesses, that's when it's just like, oh my goodness, like the idea of thinking at my old PR firm, if my boss would have come to me and been like, to be successful, to become an exec at this office, you need to come to our seminar and listen to me speak. But you have to pay for a ticket to listen to me speak.
Yeah, that's wild.
And I'm in the office and I'm like, what? Okay.
Not to mention it's like almost worse to me than being like this 9-to-5 corporate slave, because you don't even have any security, right? Like, you have no guarantee of any kind of income at all.
Yeah, there's nothing. Like, you're not getting, and what was hard for me is I grew up in this, right? So it's like, sometimes if you grow up in like religion or things like that, right? Like, I grew up in, conservative Christian household, which I was actually listening on your guys' episode where you're like, what does it mean to be an evangelical Christian? Right. And I was like, oh, I know. It's like you're spreading the word. You're an evangelist. You're trying to spread the word. Right. And so like, there were so many things that I look back and I'm like, oh, like as I grew up like that, I can see how that would look really weird to other people, like speaking in tongues or talking about all these things. But those are all things I grew up with. They were very normalized. And there are things about other cultures, right? People talk about the food other cultures eat.
Right.
That's so weird. And it's like, not if you grew up with it.
Right.
And so for me, there's so much that I slowly unraveled where I'm like, that's super weird. Like, that's strange. And there was so much of it that to me was just so not weird at all. And that's
you're only normal.
Hard for me. Yeah. Where I was like, oh, it is normal to like hand the reins of your life over to this rich person because they can tell you how to raise their kids. They can tell you all these things. And it was also very like, oh my gosh, one of the things Brad preached was like the 48-hour rule, right? Whereas like, if you're married, you should never go more than 48 hours without sex.
Whoa.
This isn't a business conference?
Yeah. Oh, no. That's the thing.
I'm like, no wonder there's more men there. They're just like, yes, the 48-hour rule. You're just like,
let's go.
Oh my God.
honestly, calling it a business conference will leave you confused. You won't understand. It's a religious thing, and not even like religious, like Christianity, because that is the dominant thing there. But like, it's not even that. It's an own set. It's an
ideology, right, of its own.
Like even my uncle, when I quit, I remember telling him like, it's been really hard with my family since I quit, and my uncle was like, "What do you mean it's been hard?" He's like, "My son, he's like, I would never be upset at your cousins for like leaving a job. Isn't it just a job?" He's like, why would they be upset at you? And I'm like, oh, you really don't get it. Like, it's not. But even he was like, they say from stage, if you don't do this, you're either ignorant, stupid, or both. And that was the other thing I grew up hearing all the time is if you don't, it's not just that this is a really good idea or this is a really good deal. It's if you don't do it, it is for everyone. It's for everyone. And you're an idiot if you don't do it. It's like, it is gospel to them. Like, this is the way, the truth, and the life for everyone. And if you don't do it, you're wrong. And I remember being a little kid, and I came down the stairs, and my dad had hung up the phone, and afterwards he just goes, "Not a wise man." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, he decided, not to do it or whatever." And I was like, "Well, maybe it's just not for him." And my dad goes, "It's for everyone." And as a little kid,
of course,
who so desired to be seen as wise, that like imprinted on me.
Of course.
I'm like, oh, this is the wise thing to do. So when I had these desires to like go to college or like date or which it made dating tricky anyways, but like to do all these things outside, it was like, they were things where I'm like, well, that is a bad desire of mine. That is a fleshly wrong desire. And I need to deny myself that, which, I think
getting rich is not.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, right? Is it was seen as a calling. And I even remember I had a conversation with my brothers and we said, everybody has a calling. How cool is it that ours allows us to be rich? Weird. So
I like that. Same. Speaking my language, you guys. Speaking my language.
Becca's like, I'm joining tomorrow.
Also, you're your own celebrity, basically, right? Yeah. Like the dimes and everything are like a celebrity. And so that was for me when I realized I was like, wait a minute, I don't really want any of this. Yeah. And that was the other thing. I remember showing the plan to people near the end there, where I literally was in my head being like, I hope you don't join this. You are going to hate your life if you do. And then when they said no, I was like,
yeah, good blessings to you. Well, that's what's interesting. That's the interesting thing is like when I was watching this Herbalife documentary, it's like at a certain point when someone's entrenched in it deep enough, they know that the majority of people that they're going to be recruiting, if they do recruit them, are not going to financially benefit. And so there is like this conscious choice, and that's where it got kind of dark when I was watching at least the Herbalife documentary. I was like, damn, this does go beyond like, at some points, this does go beyond someone. I mean, people get brainwashed, absolutely. But there are certain times in MLMs where you're watching someone consciously like saying, well, I'm not going to really give a fuck if this person loses their money and like loses their whatever in this, because I need to find a way to get as many of these people under me as possible. Of course, I'm not saying that everyone has this like malicious intent, but there is this sort of conscious choice to like turn a blind eye to how this might affect someone's life negatively. And that's where it does get dark.
I think that's why in a lot of ways, I think that's why my dad has never been that successful, because, and I still really respect my dad in a lot of ways. And I think I realized at some point that he never did the really extreme things. Like he would never counsel someone to sell their mattress.
He was not willing to fuck someone over.
Right. He was not willing to counsel things like that. And to this day, he still doesn't. Like he still says like the sell out thing, like extreme, but he would not, they counsel you to miss weddings. There are people that were like, I didn't go to my sister's wedding. Yeah, but she's not the one who pays my bills,
Right.
and things like that. But my dad just wouldn't. My dad was never, even when I was like, I've had the same best friend since middle school. And when she was getting married, it was like, I have to go on this trip. And that's something that's like talked down about. And my dad was like, go, like no hesitation. Like you're going to Lydia's wedding. You are going to be in her wedding. Like I was her maid of honor, for heaven's sakes. Like he's like, don't even worry about it. And so I think that those things, it slowly dawned on me where I was like, how can he do all of the core work, which he does, and still not be successful? And it clicked because I was like, there were so many people who did. And they would actually, there were people who would like tell from stage, like exactly what they did. And I'd be so confused because I'd be like, my dad does 3 times that much, but they would always say it's just a numbers game. And I'm like, false. And it dawned on me that I was like, oh, he's not extreme enough. And that was something that for me, that like, where he earnestly believes like there isn't that malicious intent, which is why sometimes it was hard for me to speak on or even speak against, and why I'm like, please don't let him find this podcast, because I'm like, I get that for you, it's not malicious, but you are stuck. Like people are stuck. Like they have to be in denial, because this was something, I think I had this thought before I left. It was one of the things that left, where I was like, they say anyone can get rid. And I guess technically, if you look at the business model, technically, yes, right? Like technically it is possible. Technically it's not illegal, right? But at no one point can everybody be. For every person that's successful, there's a whole bunch of people under them that aren't yet. And that's how the business model stands. So yeah, if you go forward into eternity, then there's always, right? But you always have to keep moving along. And that for me really bothered me, because I was like, there's going to be no point in my life that everyone that's in my business is successful and happy.
Right.
That was a problem to me, because they always talked about, well, at your company, there's only one CEO and stuff like that. It's like, but I don't aspire to be Satya Nadella. Like I'm not asking to be him. And most people in the company aren't. But if I want to move up in the ranks, I can do that. Like that is, and I mean, I talk about Microsoft because that's where myself and my husband work, but that's not, and don't think I'm too cool. I'm like in HR, but but like,
pretty sick.
That's not, like that's not the goal. Like nobody suspects that when you interview there, they're not like 2 to 5 years.
Right.
You be Satya himself. Right. They're like, this is the actual compensation. Like this is when you level up. Like this is how you negotiate salary. And
Here's your insurance. Here's the salary that you're buying
and
into.
Insurance from day one. You get you get benefits. I think that's the thing that's hard, that for me, where I was like, I can't do that, because at no point will everyone that I have recruited into this, at no point will they all be successul and happy. Like there will be no stopping point. There will always have to be more.
So I'm curious, like, as we're kind of coming to the end of this discussion, like what have you taken from this? Like, where are you at now just in terms of processing this, and like, what have you taken from this experience of your upbringing and continuing to have a relationship, with your parents, wherever you're at now, while they're still involved? Kind of like, I guess, what's your takeaway as of right now?
Yeah. And I like that you say as of right now, because obviously it's always evolving. But first off, I feel incredibly grateful. I don't actually really struggle with a lot of anger. And I wouldn't even say struggle, because I think that's just part of the process. But actually, more of my childhood and like the pain from my child comes from one of my parents actually having some pretty pervasive mental health problems that went completely unaddressed, in large part because of Amway, actually, which is hard, because it's like, when you go diamond, you can sleep when you're dead. When you go diamond, you can deal with it. And so it was always like this, like, we don't talk about our issues before going diamond. So that is one thing that's really hard for me. But so the majority of where I've like dealt with that is like coming out of like what has it looked like to, you know, have a parent who has really major mental health problems that went completely unaddressed and everybody denied and we all just pretended weren't there. Mm-hmm. So that's been a thing that has been more so the focus of my healing. Amway's kind of been a side script. The one thing that still really gets me, it's still really hard to hear people talk about their college experience because I need to square away that I'm never going to have that. Mm-hmm. And I think there are some things that if you don't get them right away, you can always go back, but you can't go back and have your college years. And so I think that's something that still really stings, and it's still something that I'm trying to find peace with. And it's actually been a part of the reason I've been kind of like hesitant. I really want kids, but it is one of my fears in having kids is that it's going to be hard for me to watch them have the childhood that I wish I had. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that's going to be a thing, but, you know, we'll see what's brought up if I am able to have kids. But I think I don't blame myself, which I feel really grateful for because what chance did I have? I was born into this cultural cult. But I feel really grateful because when you're born into something that you are told is the capital T truth, and then you find out that it doesn't line up. Like you get into the world and you're like, this doesn't this is a square peg and there are round holes here and I can't fit this. It really has I have really learned how to be kind of like an independent thinker and really I have taken a lot of that independence for granted or not for granted, sorry, but it has made me a really independent person in ways that I think are really good for me. Mm-hmm. And so I follow people on social media that I don't completely agree with. And I listen. And actually, this is something that I wanted to actually even thank you, Becca, because the way you present arguments on social media of stuff where you're listen, here's a legitimate argument from the side that I don't agree with their conclusion. Here's where I disagree from it. And also here's the way you present that has actually gotten me thinking about several issues where I go, oh, I never thought of it that way. And regardless whether I come to the same conclusion or not, actually you have changed my mind on one specific thing, but I that's really interesting.
And I feel like I got that from my experience with my Christian upbringing. I feel the same way where I'm because I have exactly questioned and deviated from something that I was taught was the capital T truth, it now gives me a different perspective and probably a deeper understanding of where other people are coming from in their truth that they believe and being able to have, I think it's really cool to be able, for all of us to be able to have that compassion and empathy to look at people and be totally get where you're at. I get it. And not in a condescending way, oh, I used to be there, but no, I understand. Right. And I feel that way about other things too. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's given me that, I think, critical thinking about a lot of things. Yeah. And I have a great sense of humor about it. I love to just drop on people. I'm I grew up in Amway. Hell yeah. Just a fun party anecdote at this point in time. Mm-hmm. But and then there are crazy stories about the time I let a man change my brake light at midnight at a gas station when no one else is around because I was trying to prospect him. And the old man who I was showing the plan to, and he brought saffron and was telling me how it was an aphrodisiac and was sprinkling it on his coffee and offering it on mine. And I was no thanks. Do you want to join my business? Right. And I felt that was so much fear. So danger. But I think for me, it has become a thing where going through something where you're if I do what I just deeply feel in my spirit is the right thing to do, I'm going to lose everything, which did happen to me. It did. My oldest brother, he and I were best friends growing up, best friends. He doesn't talk to me. He's blocked me on all social media. Oh my gosh. He I don't know if my phone number is blocked. Like he doesn't answer it. Like I don't exist to him any longer. And when you grow up where everything in your world just like cracks open and you're like, oh, nothing. It is like a really tragic in some ways, but actually a great way to start adulthood, because I have built my life from the ground up in a lot of ways. And I feel really, really proud. Like when I have times where I feel kind of down on myself, I look out and I go, but look how brave you were. Mm-hmm. And you aren't miserable because you were so brave. And like, it's something that I get to like carry with myself and be like, I'm really, really proud of me. And I think a lot of people, like, it's something I'm really proud of, like, not in like a prideful way, but like, I am really proud of who I am. Like, I like myself. And I think that's sadly a pretty rare thing to be able to say, but I really like who I am. And I can see that I can change and that I can have things that I don't believe and then go, oh, I can change my mind about that. Or even things that are truth adjacent, because that's kind of something that messed me up, right? Is still, I would consider myself a Christian, though not like the cultural Christian. Yeah. I hesitate to say that because I'm like, I think people assume I believe things that I definitely don't when I say that. But I would still say like I'm a very spiritual person. I still in a lot of ways, like many of the doctrines, you know, I still would say like I believe those things, but I feel very like independently, like I've studied them. Like I actually went to school and was like studying, like, how do you study the Bible? But that's like a separate thing. But I think when I look and I go, oh, I can parcel those things out. Like I don't have to just swing the pendulum the other way. I can see the world in a nuanced way. So I think it really has made me the person that I am, which anybody who's gone through any amount of trauma can say like I wouldn't relive it. Like I would not go back. If I could go back and change things for my little self, I 100% would. Yeah. But I can't. And it's the world I grew up in. And I'm proud of what I've done with it. So I think that's my takeaway is that it's made me like what I've done with it. I feel really proud of, and I am slowly repairing the relationships with the people in my life who desire to have a relationship with me. And hey, I met my husband through it. We worked at the same place. He was a personal trainer at a club where I was the barista, but we would have never crossed paths because he's not the type of guy who was going to come hit on a barista and the thing. And I was not gonna. I was like, hot personal trainer with muscles. So, if you have to join a cult to find your husband, then do it. You gotta do.
And that's the takeaway from today. The takeaway is if you have to join a cult to find your husband, do it, sweetie.
Do it. You can always go back later.
Yes, girl.
What if change your mind?
What if at the end of this we're like, okay, plug Kirsten, and you're like, yeah, so I have my own personal business. You can go to my website at monat.com/Kirsten.
I'm now selling beauty counter. I got my eyeliner. Just kidding. This does not come from any. Well,
no MLM eyeliner today.
Oh my gosh. And thankfully too, I'm like, oh, my in-laws, I'm like, when I met you, I was getting your son into a pyramid scheme. Yeah. But you still like me.
That speaks volumes.
Yes. Speaks to the charisma.
Exactly.
Well, do you have anything to plug? Do you want people to follow you on Instagram or chat with you if they want to reach out to you? No, I just ask because sometimes people like want to message about their own experiences.
Instagram has exactly 3 photos on it. None of them have my face in them. I really have Instagram to follow people.
Yes.
But I do feel so grateful and like I said, I was so moved just by your story and feel really appreciative. It's a very, very vulnerable thing to share. And I feel so appreciative that you had done that. And I've learned a lot from you, Becca, in, the way you present arguments and the way that you present yourself in the world. And I just feel so grateful and feel really, really honored to be able to share my story. And the reason I decided to share it was I really do hope that it actually can help someone to
Absolutely.
maybe understand. Because I think there's a lot of people that just hate on MLMs, and I think people listen to this. But like, what I think I can be helpful is to the people who don't, right? Where they're like, I don't hate it, or I grew up in it, and like, what's that like? And I think I'd still have compassion toward people who are in it. I think you can't split it. It's not black and white.
Nope.
So the people who are in it really do with all their heart believe that it's a good thing. So I think it's just a tough thing. But yeah, thank you so much for.
Oh my gosh, thanks for coming on. It was great to chat.
You are amazing. Thank you so much for sharing everything and like being so vulnerable. And also, I know that you have a job, but also I think you should get into public speaking.
Yeah, become that motivational speaker you always dreamed of.
Oh, thank you. That would be like my ultimate goal, but I don't want to be one of those people that are like, I just have something to say, so I'm going to say it. I think I need some substance behind it. So I am. Oh my God. Also, I'm so sorry. This is like so fangirly, but Becca, again, when you posted when you were pregnant, you're like, I'm going back to school. Like I saw that post and started crying because I was like, I want to go back to school.
Yeah.
And so long way home, 27 years old, and I'm in my senior year of college.
Are you serious?
In 12 weeks.
Oh my gosh! That is a happy ending. Wow, that is so cool. So proud of you.
I know that you weren't able to have that college experience, but the fact that you're doing
that's
this,
so awesome.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. So hopefully, one day I'll be able to like that would be my goal, it's to be a public speaker in some sort of right. So hopefully I'll be wise enough in something that would have some sort of value to add to the world one day.
I don't know. I see maybe a MLM TED Talk
recovering
in the future.
MLM TED. Yeah, maybe that.
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, I talk all the time, and I always say to my husband, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And then he always says, TED Talks are only 15 minutes.
Well, we said at the top of this episode, that's funny you say that, because we go, this is not a TED Talk. We used to say that all the time on the podcast, but this is not a TED Talk. So yeah, thanks for coming to our TED Talk, Bros, with us and Kirsten. Kirsten, thank you so much for joining us.
And oh my God, thank you.
And we'll chat soon, Bros.
Chat soon.